we're talking about growth as well during the growth track that's powered by KPMG. And during this session, we are going to talk. We're going to have a panel about what distribution partnership means and how you can leverage growth through distribution partnerships. So I'm pleased to invite here next to me Rene Schob, partner of KPMG, and Dan Lupu, partner of Earlybird Ventures. So to begin with, first of all, I would kindly ask you to ask questions as well and to complement my questions. Should you want to find something else than the questions I prepared, I'm going to begin by asking you to shortly introduce ourselves to the audience.
Yes, my name is Rene Schob. I'm a partner with KPMG. KPMG usually is used to be known as one of the big audit firms and having nothing to do with innovation and startups, which is not very true, because as KPMG in Romania, we run now the first accelerator, which is run by a professional services firm like us. And we have 4 startups in our first batch, and it runs very well.
I'm Dan, Romanian, based in Bucharest. I'm one of the 4 partners running the Digital East Fund of Earlybird. This is a $150 million fund investing in Central and Eastern Europe and Turkey. We made 6 investments in CE so far, 3 of them in Romania, 1 Bulgaria, 2 in Slovakia. Most probably our best known investment is one of the sponsors, UiPath, where we were the first investor.
Thanks a lot. To get the conversations going, I will kindly ask you to give us some examples from your experience. You might be directly working with them or you've heard of them, of successful partnerships that startups did, successful distribution partnerships.
Maybe I can take an example from ourselves. I mean, we KPMG start more and more to partner up also with startups or other collaboration partners. And successful means always that you have to have a match and you have to have, let's say, the DNA which is really the same. We go, for instance, with some startups which we have now in the batch to our own clients, introduce them alongside our own services, for instance. And this gives, of course, the startups 2 things. First of all, visibility. But second of all, thanks to the brand of KPMG in the market, of course, also credibility, because this is one of the biggest challenges at the very beginning if you go on the market as a startup, that you really get the credibility that you will really make it, that you are still there in 3 years. And therefore, I believe if you want to go into the market and to collaborate with partners on distribution, that you have to get what you yourself cannot bring into the fit.
Dan?
Partnerships are important, but just to put things in perspective, I think it's important depending on the stage in the life of the company where you are, because everybody wants to have partners because they will do half of your work. They will deal with the clients. They will you will not have to do the sales calls, no pitching. But the reality is that partnerships work only when you are already of certain size. And I can give you examples. Now UiPath partners with all the big 4, all the major consultancies in the world are distributing them. But I think an important thing to consider is that they got to this point only when they were of size. At the beginning, everybody wanted to sign a partnership, but nobody was doing anything about it. So companies' ability to initially do even the partners' work is important, and you have to be prepared to do the partners' work and pay them a fee in the beginning in order for you to get to a certain size. And then everything works, and then the partners take over and actually do something for the fee they are charging.
I can add here an example. We as KPMG, we have a strategic worldwide alliance with one of the big IT firms for 5 years. And for 4 years, we were always asking ourselves in Romania, how do we get them moving for us? And all of a sudden, this May, they stood without asking in front of our doors. And guess what happened? Their KPI structure within the firm and how their bonus is paid was more towards partnerships, and this made them at the end running. So I mean, it's as you said, Dan, it's a lot also about the incentivizing.
So as the company, getting back to what you said, as the company grows, it gets easier and easier to close partnership because the company already has a name, already has a brand. Like almost everybody wants to work with UiPath today. But if we go back to when UiPath was a team of 2 or 3, if we go back to early stage startups that and founders that might be in the room that have a prototype, have a business, they want to strike strategic partnerships, but how should they start? How should they do it in order to actually work?
They should actually be able to do the entire work themselves. So again, once you get to a certain size, everything works, but that's not the subject of our discussion here because none of you is in that position. And at the beginning, the frustrating thing is that it's easy to sign a partnership. It's much more difficult to make it work because there is this almost fetish of big potential corporate partners to sign partnerships because they want to have access to technology, new technology. They want to have the startup vibe around them. But getting it from here, from signing partnerships to making the partnership work, it's a lot of hassle for the startups. And again, you need to be prepared not only to do your job, but to do initially the partner's job, and on top of that, pay them for the privilege of working together.
Rene, how can they start looking for successful strategic partnerships? And to be more specific, in the case of KPMG, how can a tech startup strike a successful strategic partnership with KPMG?
So maybe this is like a sneak peek what I do now. KPMG Romania just bought a Swiss firm, which is quite funny for me, being Swiss, living for 10 years in Romania, that we buy a Swiss firm. It was a startup, and they could not take off properly. Why? First of all, it was about credibility. They were also in a very key part of a HR tool. And they somehow could not find the right package in order to go to the market. So they were always missing something. They had a tool, but actually the potential clients wanted not just the tool, they wanted something on top, maybe a bit of consultancy or whatever. And we were discussing some strategic partnerships with regards to going to distribute, so that KPMG is adding the consultancy part from HR point of view. They provide the tool and we go together. And this worked out actually in Romania quite okay. But unfortunately, they could not get any traction in their home market. So we decided actually to buy them for 2 reasons. First of all, we strongly believe that we can do actually a match of both. So we were missing a tool, they had a tool. And secondly, we could add the credibility they were missing in order to sell their tool to big firms. Because if you pitch in front of, I don't know, a worldwide insurance firm, and it's about an HR tool of their 15,000, 20,000 people, they don't want a startup tool which might not be around anymore in 2 years. So it's about the match, first of all. But secondly, with respect to your question with KPMG, we will never become a technology firm, KPMG. I mean, we will maybe hire a couple of developers, but that's it. Therefore, what we would look at is someone comes with a tool, we come with our expertise and with our access to the market. And if we find a way how to go to exactly the persons we know already from our client base, it is a match.
I remember a lot talking about we're talking about B2B partnerships and B2C ones alike, and I remember from my activity that I received, like when I was back at Uber, I received tens of partnership proposals from startups who were just writing me, and we were like, hey, we are a Romanian, Bulgarian, whatever startup. Please send an email to all your database presenting our product and send a push notification and blah blah. And I'm talking about tens of them. We're receiving them today at Revolut as well. What's the best way to approach a strategic partnership? None of those partnerships happened, by the way. What's the best way to approach a strategic partnership? How should you actually reach out? And what do you as a startup have to offer to the partner? Because it's clear, like for the startup, what's in it for the startup is the distribution, the association with a with a well-known brand, with an important brand. What can the startup offer in return? And how should they approach the partner?
I think it's important to understand whether there's a fit, as Rene was saying, between you and the client of the potential partner. As you said, sending an email asking Uber to distribute or send push notifications is a bit idiotic, but you need to understand the structure of the market, and you need to understand the business of the potential partner. If you are talking to a consultancy, then you need to create for the consultancy, you need to create the opportunity for them to sell advisory services. This can come because the tool or the product or the service that you are selling requires extensive implementation or integration work in order to function. And that's the way to approach it. You approach it by going directly to the client, and then have the client put you in touch with the consultancy in order to create the handshake that makes the relationship work. It's rarely that it works from the first time that you go and approach a potential partner for a strategic relationship. You need to make it work on a case-by-case basis initially, and then take it to a strategic level.
Okay, Rene?
You for sure also know this feeling that you are asked, okay, I have a problem with my eye, to what doctor shall I go? And you give a referral. And then your friend comes back and says, look, this doctor really treated me shitty, it's really bad. And I think this is exactly what is also true in distribution. I mean, the minute you are going to refer another product, a partner, you have to be 100% comfortable that this partner delivers what you, as a promise, also always deliver. Because it's like you give your client into his hands or the other way around. And therefore, again, it's very important that you have a thinking or a strategic setup of the culture which really matches. You have something more in common to a certain extent. I mean, you could also go together for a beer and not just meeting at the meeting table, because it needs this kind of glue in order to also go, and it happens, through situations where you get challenged. You know, you sold also a tool and it doesn't work, right? And it should hopefully not be the problem of KPMG, but the problem of the tool provider. Nevertheless, KPMG is in the board as well. So that's why I think it's very important that you really get yourself first the comfort that you, if you are distributing something for someone else, that this tool is really good or this solution is good. And the other way around, if you are searching for a distributor, you have to assure that how they sell your product, maybe they do it without you, is really the way how you want to have it, that they bring it across. And for that, as you said, you have to equip this distribution partner also with tools. I mean, they don't do the work, you have to do the work.
And because we started talking about things that can go wrong and are going wrong, what about the most common mistakes that founders do when searching for distribution partnerships?
I think the most common mistake is the belief that once the partnership is signed, sales will pour in. This almost never happens. So it takes time, and the partner will test you as much as the clients. They will take it slowly, so you need to understand whether the speed at which the partner will move is the speed that you expect. And I think a related mistake is the fact that people don't understand that once you have a partner, you also lose something, because you lose direct access to the client, and there's knowledge which is lost, and there's relationships which are weaker because of that.
Okay, Rene, what are the most common mistakes in your view?
From my point of view, as a startup, the most common mistake is that you are too opportunistic too early in your plan. So there is, of course, always the tendency to jump opportunistically on almost any train when you're a startup. You also have a lot of ideas. If you planned first for one module in your app, usually you find 10 reasons to make 3 instead of focusing. And with distribution, it's the same. So if you are too opportunistic and you are just very appealed by a telco call center provider who sells also over the phone your tool, maybe this is not the most appropriate one. Plus, going into exclusivity from the very beginning. I think this is really something which can harm your whole business very early. I mean, the minute you go in distribution into exclusivity, you really have to be very clear in what you get in return for it.
That's a clear no. I mean, getting exclusivity, regardless with a client or with a distribution partner, should be a no-go.
So, because we talked about, Rene, you talked about being opportunistic, startups being opportunistic too much and too early. When's the right time for a startup to actually start looking for a distribution partnership? Because we've talked about different stages. When's the right time to do it?
No, I mean, you have from the very beginning, you have to have the distribution into your plan. I mean, there is this famous saying of the technicians who don't know how to sell their product, right? And the salesmen who know how to sell the product, but they have none. And therefore, I think you have to plan very early through what distribution channel you want to sell. But you have to be very clear how you do it. And this should take some time, because I do not assume you have your product ready to sell in the first couple of months. So you have some time, but you should push this parallel and test various channels with a lot of discussions and so on.
Then, when's the right time?
You do it once you want to grow beyond the rate of growth that you are able to sustain yourself. But this means that this is not a first step in distributing. So you cannot you cannot use distribution as a way of entering the market. You need to enter the market and start executing. So sell, implement, and support your product. And only once you cannot do it, do this on your own, then you get leverage, and you multiply your growth by signing distribution partnerships. But it's never a first thing.
I wanted to ask you also how we make sure that the partnership brings results. Like from my experience, if I look at the partnership, very few bring actual results for both sides involved, because it definitely must be a win-win. Both the distribution partner and the startup have to win. From my experience, there's a huge number of partnerships where partners invest a lot of time in negotiating, and then they don't go through because legal on both sides doesn't let them close that deal. So I have around 30% of the partnerships I discussed were stuck in the point where our legal with their legal didn't agree to actually sign the agreement on one side, and then on the other side there are the partnerships that we actually signed and went through. It went a lot of negotiation before, the negotiation on the legal side, and then nothing happened on either side. So how do you sort out the legal maze in order to get it done, and what happens next? How do you actually make it happen?
don't think there's any bulletproof method to do it. It's discussions are gonna fail. The same thing like you negotiate with a client and then it fails at procurement stage. Same thing will happen with distribution partnerships. The more realistic you are, and the better you are at identifying the assumptions that you are making when thinking about a partnership, and the degree to which you are honest about this, the better, and you will reduce your rate of failure, which translates into time. But there's no bulletproof. It will fail. Some of them will fail.
Yes, I think KPIs, again, are something important, and the review of them. I think if you are just starting like, okay, let's go to the market together, or please sell our product, and we give you 22% of the yearly revenue, it will not work. I mean, you really have to have maybe a common business plan, review it, and also be ready to stop it at any moment. But once again, selling, okay, if we do not talk about online selling, but still human beings, face-to-face selling, it's about people. And if you do not find a match with the ones who should distribute your product, then it's very likely that they will take the one of your competitor or another one because they're just closer to their heart.
Okay, I still have plenty of questions, but I was wondering whether you guys in the audience have any questions for our guests. Anyone? Okay, so it's oh, here.
What do you think? What is or not what is one, but one specific, but a couple of good ideas how to start to build trust and network when a company is entering to a new market and want to build more B2B relations?
Rene was talking about how this is a people's business in the end. So the personal relationships matter. So you need to be responsive. You need to be honest, and you need to be the one that takes the proactive approach. When you're a startup, that's your biggest advantage, because if your competitor is a large corporation that has an attitude, you can differentiate yourself by being the exact opposite.
Yeah, what shall I say? I think at the end of the day, if you go into people's businesses, as I, for instance, also saw in this company which we bought, this product is already sold in another market outside of Romania, where we as KPMG Romania are not present. Most of us, except for me, don't speak the language in Switzerland. And I was quite surprised when I was meeting some potential clients, how scared they somehow reacted when I said that I'm actually a Swiss, I'm not living in Zurich, I'm living in Bucharest. I totally underestimated this, because for me this is a no-brainer anymore. I mean, the whole world is one, so it doesn't matter where an app is coming from. I have my money in apps which come from Estonia. Do I really feel comfortable that this is from Estonia? I don't know. But apparently, when you are selling some particular things, and mainly when it's about investments, I think you have to make sure when you go abroad that you have the appropriate localization. And localization is the localization of the sales channel. So you have to understand the sales culture there. You have to understand maybe the language is an important factor. Must not be, but could be, because one of the biggest things amongst human beings creating trust is still the language. You always first trust the language. If you can talk in your mother tongue, you trust the person earlier than when you're not talking in your mother tongue. So when you go abroad, I mean, this is really something which you cannot underestimate. And that's why also a lot of startups in Romania, when they talk about expansion, they always talk about UK. Because they say, we know English, they know English, right? But maybe we underestimate then also that the culture is a bit different. And it's not just the language. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to ask a question. Just raise your hand in case you change your mind. I wanted to ask you, because we started talking about expansion and scaling. What's your advice here regarding distribution partnership? Should a tech startup with a global mindset strike a distribution partnership at European or / global level from the very beginning, or should they start with a test market and scale as after proven successful? Is there a recipe, a success recipe here, or?
You can go first.
So if I'm a tech startup and I want to strike a partnership with KPMG, should I look to partner with KPMG Romania, see whether my product gets picked up and the partnership is good in Romania, and then scale throughout the KPMG offices worldwide, or aim to work with KPMG at a global scale from the very beginning?
So my pitch would be, as a KPMG, look, we are in 160, 70 countries, 200,000 people, we sell you wherever you want. But at the end of the day, the truth is, again, it's about people. So I would first go to Romania, make a clear, let's say, a POC, and when it works, you can tell the success story to other countries based on what in the same organization already worked. And I think success stories still work the best with kind of the recipe, sales tools and so on, giving further. But I'm a fan of not aiming too high from the very beginning, but having first a very stable, proven concept, not to be tried for years, but to have something to show.
I think the question is not whether you want to do it this way or the other, because the question is whether you have access to a global or regional distribution deal initially. And when we are talking about startups, I don't think that's the case. You need to be realistic about your chances of getting a global distribution agreement, and that's not going to happen until somebody tests you. If you are a large technology company, if you are an IBM or if you are an Intel, maybe you get a global distribution partnership because you talk corporation to corporation. But a startup doesn't get a global distribution partnership with a corporation from day one. It's never going to happen. So obviously, if your contact, if your investor is able to put you in touch with the regionally relevant person that works for your potential partner, fine, go for it. If not, you need to start from somewhere, and it depends on how appealing the technology is and the direct contacts, because you need to have a direct contact with the partner.
I mean, one good thing at this very moment in Romania is that a lot of international firms are extremely successful in Romania, which gives them a certain power and positive image in their headquarters. And what I saw several times is if someone or a startup wanted to expand abroad, they tried to get first, of course, the buy-in of the local management, who helped them then selling what they wanted to sell in the headquarters in order to be distributed. And this worked in a lot of cases very well. But again, it's about you have a proven concept here and then it's transposed abroad. And I think this is really something where we here in Romania can still build on, because we still grow a lot. A lot of international firms make the biggest profits here in the country and not in Germany. So they are well regarded, and we are a very agile culture here and are very innovative. And I think this is really helping then also in leveraging it abroad.
Thanks a lot. And we have time for one last final piece of advice for business developers and for founders in the audience.
Again, I think you need to be pragmatic and try to keep the expectations real. Keep them anchored in reality. Once you once you get into the business of selling technology, you need to understand whether what you are selling is relevant for the partner, and whether this is a business opportunity for the partner, and whether the business opportunity for the partner scales to your expectations.
Yes, and I believe you have to be on the eyes levels with the partner. So if you are a 3-people company and your partner is a 200,000 people company producing something in your area, you might not be on the eyes level, and you might sacrifice some of your stuff in order to get them as distribution partners. And that's why I think it's important that both partners are somehow following the same kind of growth plans, and the same direction, at least, in order to really match both interests.
Thank you very much for your time and for being here with us today.